Welcome to a special edition of Legal AF, right at the intersection of immigration law, Donald Trump's depraved policies, and his use of immigration law to deport people who express viewpoints that he does not agree with. It's the assault on the First Amendment. And rather than talk about it in the abstract, we wanted to bring on somebody to brief our audience about a particular person, an Emmy Award-winning journalist who in Georgia, who has been living here legally for years, running his own news organization that's relied upon by people in Georgia and throughout the United States, reporting on ICE abuse, or as we like to say, when you got an ICE problem, apply heat. And certainly Mario Guevara has done exactly that with his MG News, but he's on the cusp of being removed and deported from this country because of his expression of the First Amendment. And to put this in context, just yesterday, we had a senior status federal judge in Massachusetts, Judge Young, in 161 pages say that the Trump administration is violating the First Amendment rights of those that are here, whether legally or illegally. It is still a violation of the First Amendment. And in that case, trying to suppress the speech and chill the speech of professors and student activists who came out about the Israeli-Hamas dispute and issues. And Judge Young is having none of it and has called out Donald Trump's assault on the First Amendment. With that as a context, I'm pleased to bring in Scarlet Kim, senior staff attorney at the American Civil Liberties Union, the Speech, Privacy, and Technology Project, to talk about the case. This is moving so fast that as of this recording, her client, because the ACLU represents him, is barely hanging on here in the United States, but there's a threat of him being deported at any minute back to El Salvador. Scarlet, welcome to Illegal AF.
Thank you so much for having me.
Catch everybody up, because I can tell you that while we're putting a lot of attention on it, and certainly the ACLU has had a number of articles that get published about it, I don't think my audience knows much about this Emmy Award-winning journalist and what he was doing on No King's Day, no less, and how he got picked up, and then this Kafka-esque process to separate him from his families. Why don't you tell our audience all about it?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Mario is an Emmy Award-winning journalist. He runs his own news outlet called MG News, which really specializes in live streaming immigration enforcement activity. So Mario's beat was basically waking up at 6 a.m. every morning. He had almost 1 million followers to his account. And he would basically follow leads on where ICE raids were occurring, and he would document them in real time. In June 2025, June of this year, he was documenting a No Kings protest in the Atlanta area, and he was arrested by local law enforcement and charged with a couple of misdemeanors, basically for stepping into a roadway. And those charges were very quickly dismissed, but ICE took him into its custody, and he's been in ICE detention since, so over 100 days. There are a couple of really alarming things about his case. I mean, the first relates to his long detention in ICE custody, where he was actually issued a bond order by an immigration judge on July 1st, but ICE refused to release him and argued repeatedly in justifying its refusal to release him that his reporting on law enforcement activity is in and of itself inherently dangerous.
Let's stop right there. So now we've got an administration that if you pull out your cell phone and you start recording, doing nothing else to interfere, but documenting what is happening, you are now interfering with law enforcement, and you could be subject to severe penalties and sentence if you are convicted of that crime. Is that where we are as an administration right now?
Yeah, I think so. And I think for non-citizen journalists, what's particularly dangerous is that they could be recording something. The government, Secretary Noem recently described filming ICE as violence. And you could be retaliated against, and you could have the full force of the immigration enforcement system come down on you through detention, through potential removal proceedings. And that's essentially what has happened to Mario.
Yeah. And then Judge Young's decision, which we have up on our Legal AF Substack, he documented, because he had an evidentiary hearing, at least 5 different non-native professors who've said our speech is chilled, even though we're here legally watching what has happened to fill in the blank. we're not speaking out, which is exactly what Donald Trump wants, right? He wants to run an administration in interim in order to stop viewpoints from being expressed that he doesn't agree with, like Mario's, your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. The Committee to Protect Journalists issued or filed a declaration in our habeas case, and they noted the enormous chilling effect that Mario's detention has had on, in particular, non-citizen journalists and those reporting on the actions of public officials in this country.
Talk to our we like to joke that on Legal AF, it's sort of a TED Talk meets a law school class, and
Sure.
maybe, right? And even though many of our audience are not in the law profession the way that you and I are, they've learned a thing or two being around Legal AF for the last 5 years. Talk about the different legal proceedings that are currently going on and which ones have overcome the other, and what are you on pins and needle, and therefore Mario's family. I almost cried during it. I read an article that was written by his son, who's taken over the news organization. There's a, let's get to the human quality here. There's a person who's been here lawfully with a Social Security card, working with a proper permit. His job just happens to be journalism and reporting on this administration. And they're using the immigration laws to try to silence him and send him out of the country. You got a couple of proceedings. Why don't you kind of tie all that together for our audience?
Sure. So we filed a habeas petition in federal court in August, which focused really on his unlawful detention. And we argued that the government's basis for detaining him, the justification being that his reporting is inherently dangerous, is a First Amendment violation. And we've been calling for his release from detention since we filed that case. There's a parallel immigration proceeding that relates to whether or not Mario can remain in this country. And as you said, Mario, he had removal proceedings that were being litigated 13 years ago, and the government agreed to basically close those proceedings. So since that time, he's been here lawfully, working lawfully. He has a Social Security number. He's committed no crime, had no criminal arrest record prior to the dubious arrest he experienced in June. He has 2 U.S. citizen children, a U.S. citizen mother, U.S. citizen sister, U.S. citizen brother. He's a successful businessman. He's a pillar of his community. When he was brought into ICE detention, the government decided that it would reopen the 13-year closed removal proceedings against him. And what's especially shocking about that decision is that Mario actually has a clear path to residency through his U.S. citizen son, and his U.S. citizen son has a pending what's called I-130 petition to basically pave the way for Mario to receive a green card. When the government said they wanted to reopen the proceedings, Mario's immigration counsel asked for his removal proceedings to basically go back down to an immigration judge and have the immigration judge decide his green card process. And just last week, the Board of Immigration Appeals, which is not an Article 3 court, it sits within the executive, made a couple of decisions, first denying Mario's request to have his adjustment of status process adjudicated and entering a final order of removal, which is what now places him at imminent risk of deportation. We have filed numerous emergency motions to try and stay deportation. Before the habeas court, we filed an emergency motion. And then up at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, we've appealed the Board of Immigration Appeals immigration decision and also filed an emergency stay motion seeking to stay his removal.
And with the Trump administration, for whatever reason, saying they're going to hold off on deporting for tomorrow, how do you feel? What are your chances, do you think, that the 11th Circuit's going to pay attention to this in time, that he's not removed away and taken away from federal jurisdiction?
So my understanding is that the Trump administration has said publicly in a couple of news reports today that they intend to continue removals to the extent that they can. So I think that Mario remains at risk of deportation. When we filed the emergency motion up at the 11th Circuit, the government filed a letter with the 11th Circuit saying that they could remove Mario as soon as tomorrow. And typically in these emergency stay motions, the government provides that kind of timeline so that the Federal Court of Appeals has a sense of when they should decide the emergency stay motion by. That's not a guarantee that they'll issue a decision before tomorrow, but we hope desperately that it will.
Yeah, I mean, it would piss off the 11th Circuit, but then we'd have that problem which federal judges are complaining about, like Judge Chutkan, which is yeah, I see abuse by the Trump administration, but I also see people that are away from my federal jurisdiction. And you certainly don't want that to happen from a legal standpoint. And the family certainly doesn't want to have it happen from a human dimension. And the removal would be back to El Salvador.
It would be back to El Salvador.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, it's shocking that many things that you've briefed our audience on are shocking. It's shocking that this guy is out in the open, doing his job, wins an Emmy. Nobody had a complaint about any of this, but go out on the street and start filming No King's Day. Or as you put in your press release, journalists should not have to fear government retaliation for just doing their jobs or having their families torn apart as a result. I thought that sort of summarized in a nutshell why you're fighting so hard, and the ACLU is fighting so hard on his behalf. What do you want to have happen here? What should the 11th Circuit do? What should the habeas corpus court do?
We hope that the 11th Circuit will stay Mario's removal. And we hope once his removal is stayed, the habeas court can order his immediate release from detention so he can be reunited with his family while he continues to fight his immigration case up at the 11th Circuit.
And is the ACLU involved with all of those proceedings?
We're involved in the habeas case, and then he has an immigration team on the immigration case up at the 11th Circuit, and the immigration team is also actually bundled into the habeas team.
Got it.
Yep.
Work closely with you. Tell our audience while we have you, brief them a bit about you work for a particular project at the ACLU, the Speech, Privacy, and Technology Project. Talk about what that is, because that has taken on, when that was named a number of years ago, it wasn't with the Trump administration necessarily in mind. We're really focused here on speech, although I could see privacy issues as well. Talk about what that project's all about, what you do as a senior staff attorney. Just kind of update them about the role of the ACLU in this kind of area.
Sure. So the ACLU, we have a national ACLU, which is where the project is housed. I should also note that we have affiliates in almost every single state. And so we have ACLU affiliates in each state also working on similar civil liberties issues at the state level. At the national level, our legal department, which is where our litigators sit, we're divided into project areas. So we have a speech privacy technology project where I sit, where we focus on First Amendment and Fourth Amendment issues. We have a voting rights project, an immigrants' rights project, criminal law reform project, LGBTQ project. We cover the whole waterfront of civil liberties, and we're designed to work within these projects so that we can provide kind of specialized expertise and focus on cases raising major implications for the rights that we focus on. So the Speech, Privacy, and Technology Project, we focus on bringing impact cases, challenging government policies, that we think have profound implications for either our First Amendment rights or our Fourth Amendment rights.
And how did you end up with that particular project? I looked at your bio. Talk to our audience about sort of your path and how this turned out to be a perfect home for you.
Well, I have a long, winding career path. I spent my first year at law school, at the New York affiliate. And I worked on a range of civil rights issues. I actually ended up working abroad for some years after that. And I think the main experience that's perhaps relevant is that I worked for a human rights organization focused at the intersection of privacy and technology in London for a couple of years. And then I wanted to come back home for personal and professional reasons. It was also the first Trump administration at that time, and I really wanted to come back home and litigate civil rights issues. I started first at the National Security Project at the ACLU, and then I shifted over to the Speech, Privacy, and Technology Project.
Yeah, Trump in any iteration has an ability to flash the bat signal that brings people back who want to run into the burning building and not run away from it. We're so glad that the ACLU and that's you, Scarlet Kim, are on the front lines working so hard to protect our civil liberties, our First Amendment rights. Now is the time to step up and for people to, this is that moment in history where you've got to take a side. And we're so pleased to have a close relationship with the ACLU here on Legal AF and have folks like you come on and brief our audience. When not even a kid, when I was a young adult, I don't think this maybe the ACLU still uses this phrase, but the phrase used to be, I'm a card-carrying member of the ACLU. I am a card-carrying member of the ACLU. Do they still use that in the ad campaign?
I think people still say it. I mean, of course, now it's all digital, but yes, we still toss that phrase around.
Yes, and people should, and we'll put the links down below in our hot take today. You should strongly consider becoming a card-carrying member of the ACLU and help support all of their projects and all of their so important work right now. I'm not going to try to stump you with how many cases the ACLU has right now against the Trump administration, unless you know.
I know that in the first few months we filed about 50 plus, so that number is higher now.
Higher. Yeah, I mean, from what my guess, it's closer to 100. Democracy Forward is here with us on Legal AF. They filed close to 100. Attorneys General, the 23 Democratic Attorneys General, have filed about 50. This is, I mean, as I predicted, if the first Trump administration had 1,000 lawsuits, this current iteration would have 4,000. I said that in November. I think it's running true to form so far. You can time capsule this. We'll reopen it and see. We'll bring you back. If not, we'll bring you back before for sure. Especially come back and update our audience about this fast moving story, will you?
I would love to. Thank you so much.
Great. Scarlet Kim, Senior Staff Attorney, ACLU Speech, Privacy, and Technology Project, briefing our audience about award-winning journalist Mario Guevara, who sits in detention and under a threat of almost imminent deportation because of he expressed as a journalist his First Amendment rights to cover the actions of ICE in and around the Georgia area, providing such an important public service. And for that, he's being threatened to be torn away from his family and sent back to El Salvador. We're going to cover this fast-moving case. While you're here on Legal AF, take a minute, hit the free subscribe button, come over to Legal AF Substack, where we will update matters like this in real time as best we can, and consider becoming a member and a sponsor, if you will, of the American Civil Liberties Union. Until my next report, I'm Michael Popok, today joined with Scarlet Kim. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.